Okay, so we talked about a few different cognitive distortions. There are more of them, but we went over probably what are the most common ones or the ones that you guys have experienced already. Um, Now what, right? We can identify them. We know what they are. Now what? So first off, the noticing our cognitive distortions as they happen is the first step, and it's probably the most difficult, right? So there's a good chance if you had never heard of cognitive distortions and nobody's explained to you before that you've had these distortions, but you didn't realize it at the time or even after the fact that you had them. But the simple fact that now we are aware of it makes our mind open to finding it when it happens. Okay, so just learning what they are today is going to help. But the next step is still to try and identify them as they are happening. That's the hardest part. Okay, so once we do that, once we notice that it happens, there's some things we can do, and we'll just touch on a couple of things today. But one thing, some people it might be easy enough, just like once you notice it happening, you could just correct yourself and say, no, that's not true, right? So that's one thing that some people are able to do. Another thing that we could do is to reframe it, right? So if we go to the cognitive distortion example from earlier, where I felt so awkward during my job interview, I am always so awkward. So that was an example of overgeneralization. So the I felt awkward during my job interview portion, that's not a distortion. If that's how you felt, then that's how you felt. That's true. The overgeneralization is when you say, I am always so awkward, right? Because that's not true. Always is an absolute. It means 100% of the time. So the overgeneralization isn't true. And so one of the things you can do is, if you think back to our control lessons, we can reframe it in a way that takes more ownership, right? So we could now change that statement in our mind, that thought from I felt awkward during my job interview. If I would have practiced and done some mock interviews, I probably would have felt more comfortable, right? So that's one way we notice it. We notice the original cognitive distortion. We're overgeneralizing in a negative way. And now we can change it and we can take ownership for it in a way that's not going to have such a negative effect on us. On to the next slide for one other thing we can try.